Today I'm going to do a Draw My Life video. It all starts at my aunt and uncle's wedding because my aunt invited her sister and my uncle invited his brother, and that's actually my mother and father. So my mom, who was in her 30s, kind of saw him and thought, oh, he looks like he has good sperm and I want some. And he said, okay. But my mom was a feminist and she didn't want a husband, so she decided to raise me by herself. And we lived on a farm. And I didn't have any brothers or sisters or friends, so I just played with my cat just to feed him raw hot dogs, and sometimes I'd play in my playroom by myself, and it was lonely, but I got by. I was really happy when I started school because I finally got to meet other kids my age, and I had friends for the first time, and that was really cool. But it didn't last long because we were always moving. I was moving schools, moving cities. It was hard, and I wasn't that happy about it. I didn't like change at that time. So when I was 15 years old, we had to move again, and I really liked where I was living at the time, and I didn't want to go, so I decided that I was going to run away, and I waited until my mom had a party so she couldn't chase after me. And yeah, so she threw my cat out the door and said, "Don't forget your cat." And I left. I think she didn't chase after me also because she knew I didn't have any money and I'd probably come home, which I did. And we moved to Ottawa, which is the capital of Canada, and I hated it and spent most of my time, you know, staring out the window, listening to Bob Marley and smoking weed and thinking there's got to be more than this to life. So I asked my mom after I graduated from high school, can I move to Jamaica? And she said, okay. And she let me go with love. So I flew to Jamaica, and when I arrived, it was an amazing feeling that I'll never forget. Complete freedom, and I knew that I was in for some big adventures. And I was. I went to Kingston, Jamaica because it was probably a major inspiration for Bob Marley. He was from Kingston, so I went there to get these experiences that made him so wise, hoping that one day I would be wise. And I went into this park downtown, and I would pretend to read the newspaper. Meanwhile, I would be staring at these Rastas in the park, thinking like, what are they saying? What are they doing? You know, and I was really curious about them. They, on the other hand, were more suspicious of me. They thought I was a CIA agent, you know, like trying to destroy the black people or whatever, because they're quite racist there, actually, against white people. And so one of them came over, checked my ID. I said, I'm not a CIA agent. I'm just a 17-year-old, and I'm curious about you guys. And we had the same birthday, and at that moment, he realized that, oh my God, like, we're both just humans. And he left his friends, and he invited me to his shack. And it was really, really poor, man. The bathroom was a bucket with water in it, and you'd poop in the bucket. And instead of, like, you can't flush, so you just take the bucket and throw the poop into the garden. I mean, this is, like, really, really poor stuff, man. And it was really amazingly shocking for me to see that coming from Canada. Anyway, a lot of people in the community didn't like him dating a white person, so they trashed his place. They beat him up pretty bad, broke his feet, and cut off his dreadlocks. And so, yeah. I actually went back to Canada for a month, and when I came back, we met in Ocho Rios because Kingston was too dangerous. And he said, Sasha, I'm so glad you're back because I've been living in a tree. And yeah, so I guess I dated a homeless man, and that was a very interesting experience. And yeah, an interesting part of my life. I started selling stuff when I was in Ocho Rios. I was making candles, and I was making necklaces, and I would walk up and down Ocho Rios and sell my stuff to souvenir shops. And I didn't really make that much money, but I made enough to eat, and I could stay there, so I was happy. But, you know, my boyfriend's enemies weren't that happy, you know, the white-black relationship thing, and they called the police and told them that I was a prostitute, and I was arrested. And I spent a short time in jail before my mother could get me out. I went to court and I proved that I was innocent, and I was let out, but I was deported back to Canada, which sucks because my mother was already living in Sweden. And yeah, so I had to go to Canada first, and then eventually I went to Sweden, but I didn't like it. So talked to my mom and arranged for me to go live with my aunt back in Canada. And while I was living there, one of her friends suggested that I do a TESOL course, which is a course for like teaching English. And yeah, so I became a certified English teacher, and I could work anywhere in the world that I wanted to. So I got a job in Taiwan and also in Indonesia, and I looked on the map and I don't know why, but I was attracted to this Indonesia, but I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know if like Indonesians looked like they were Chinese and like speak like Chinese, or like what kind of Asian country is this? I have no idea. But you got to take risks in life, and so I did. And I arrived, and to my surprise, it was absolutely monstrous. It was like traffic and like pollution and like, oh my God, people everywhere. It was so different. But I also realized that I was going to be an English teacher, and I can't even spell because I grew up with spell check. I'm going to be a horrible teacher. But I was still excited, and yeah, memberanikan diri, yeah? And I liked being a teacher because I didn't like having a boss, and now I was the boss. So that was fun. And these kids, I learned a lot from them. They kind of taught me a few simple Indonesian words, and it was fun for a while. And it allowed me to see this beautiful country. I saw things here that I had never seen before in my life, and I can't express to you how valuable Indonesia is to me. I started learning about Islam because I was hearing a lot about it, and I was curious about it. Like, what is this Islam? What is Islam? What is culture? What is what? And I got really deep into it, really, really deep, studying Islam. Started wearing hijab. Ugh. And I went back to Canada, actually, and I was wearing niqab at this time. And I would, you know, stay with my mom, and I'd go down in the basement at night for tahajjud prayers, and I would pray because I was trying to memorize the Quran. And I would read like Surah Al-Baqarah in my tahajjud prayers, and I would be crying, and like my mom was up on like, you know, 2 levels higher in the house, and she could still hear me, and she was starting to really worry about me. But she was supportive. And Ottawa was cool because there is a kind of a large, you know, immigrant Muslim community, and I met Muslims from all over the world, really, and it was kind of interesting to compare like how they think about Islam in each, you know, culture, and it's a very interesting community because Canada's a big melting pot. Anyway, but eventually I came back to Indonesia because it's my true love, and figured I'll just try to get another English teaching job. You know, I have experience, it's going to be easy to get a job, lots of schools need teachers, but they're kind of racist here too against bules in a hijab because, you know, they said no. Eventually I did get a teaching job, and on the side I was learning Arabic, which was kind of fun. My dad, you remember him, right? He remembered me too, and he said, I'm coming to Indonesia to visit you. And so he did, and we went traveling to Merapi, and I really got to know him for the first time, and it was absolutely amazing, and I thought I really want to hang out with him more because he's a cool guy, really. I used to really love drawing and music and acting and stuff like that, and I was getting really bored teaching. I quit my job and started studying at Sakti Actor Studio. I was still wearing my hijab, but I wasn't wearing niqab anymore. Fun, but when I went to casting, it was like, no, no, no. The hijab is not really acceptable in like a casting room, and I'm like, why can't I just be myself? It's really hard to wear a hijab, follow Islamic rules when you're a woman, especially if you're in the arts. So I followed my gut, and I just stopped following the rules so that I could chase my dreams, and so I could reach my full potential and find out what I'm really capable of as the superwoman that I feel I am, who doesn't need a hijab to protect herself from men because I carry pepper spray. So I did take off the hijab. And I did. I got a job, like Warawiri. It was like a kind of a comedy travel show with 2 really cool Indonesian guys. But in 2008, when my dad was going to come back and visit again, he died, and that really broke my heart. And I didn't get to see him after that. In other areas of my life, I was getting kind of bored of watching myself on TV. I wasn't really satisfied with my career, and I didn't think I had much of a career. I bought rollerblades, and I decided I was going to be something great, something different than I was already. And I decided I was going to rollerblade from one end of Java to the other and go all the way to Bali on rollerblades, and be the first person on earth to do so. And I did it. You know what? Like, I can make a difference in this world, but it makes me really poor. And I kind of figured, well, how can I do good things if I don't have any money and I don't have a chance? So yeah, I was kind of sad, and I was down on Jalan Jaksa, and I saw this little boy who was sleeping on the street, and he used to sleep in front of Alphamart asking for change and stuff, and I thought, you know what, that could be me. Why don't people care about others, and how come nobody sees my pain? And that made me recognize other people's pain. And so I kind of took him in, but it didn't work out, and didn't work out for me. He's off the street, by the way. My friend took him in. But I was depressed, thinking about the weight of the world on my shoulders, and I spent about a year crying and in deep, deep depression. And I wasn't doing anything during that time. I was pretty useless. The only friend I had, you know, that kind of understood me was my dog, Marley. I'm really glad that I had him, because, yeah, he was my only friend at that time, and I had a really sad time. But eventually some friends came along, and I, you know, thought, wait a minute, I'm still alive, there's still life to live, and I started to be happy again. And then once I was happy, I started doing things more productively, and I started doing my videos and uploading them to YouTube, and sometimes they watched and sometimes they didn't watch, but I think things have kind of turned around for me, and now I kind of live for YouTube, and it's all because of you guys, and I really, really love Indonesia, and thank you so, so much for my life up until now.